Good morning and welcome to our first BCP Cabinet meeting of 2022. Got a really good agenda today, so look forward to cracking into it. Welcome. First thing we're going to do before we start the meeting officially is we're going to refer to our Democratic Services Officer to housekeeping documents. Sarah.
Good morning. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphones when speaking and please mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. If accessing via Teams and you would like to speak on an item, please do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, exit the building by where the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the ground floor of the multi-storey car park. And finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go to agenda item 1, which is apologies. Do we have any apologies received, Sarah?
None received.
Okay, I need to add Councillor Lawrence Fear because he has is attending another engagement for us today, so we'll note those. And Nigel Brooks, I believe, is your hand up? It's not. So
yes, okay. It's a declaration of interest. I'm just ahead of you. Apologies.
Okay, so we'll move on to that now. Thank you very much, Nigel. After you.
Yes, a declaration, please, in respect of Cabinet item 9, Housing and Property Compliance Update. As a director of Bournemouth Building and Maintenance Limited, we provide services to the housing stock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Okay, are there any other declarations of interest? And I'll go to Councillor Dunlop-Beverley.
Yes, I have the same declaration of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations we should record? Hazel, Councillor
Allen. Just a declaration of interest that we'll be talking about rough sleeper numbers, and I work within an NHS role that has some remit around homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, to agenda item 3, the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting, which I will propose. I do need to make one amendment in that inform me of his apologies. So I'm proposing that we note, and I apologise that I didn't read that out in a meeting. So if we could add that, that'd be appreciated. Councillor Broadhead, I believe you're seconding.
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you. Are there any comments in relation to the minutes from the previous meeting? Okay, so as slightly amended, all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's great. So we move on now to agenda item 4, public issues. I can advise that today we have got no questions, statements or petitions submitted by members of the public on occasion. So I'll move forward to agenda 5, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Board. As is common practice, we will the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny will come in on each item as and when it comes up on the agenda. So not proposing to do anything further on item 5, which moves us on to agenda item 6, which is the council tax base 22-23 report. So I'll be relatively brief in terms of presenting this. So I'm proposing this. It's a technical report that we have to have every year immediately in advance of the budget. So we will be seeing our budget through the next overview, scrutiny, cabinet and full council cycle. This is actually the first time we've got this report actually talks about the 3 1, so it's one number for the 3 councils, and that's post the fact that we've harmonised council tax last year. So really, delighted that we've now harmonised council tax across the conurbation in such a short space of time. And this is the talks about that number. We had for the first time in living memory last year this number reduced effectively because of COVID. the COVID situation, and now it's really positive to say, and we've modelled the interim financial plan, so really pleased to see it's come into practice. That number has increased again, so it increased back up. So I believe it was in the region of 139,000, and now it's gone up to 142,000. It does have positive implications for our budget. We'd expected this change, and it's in line with what we were expecting. But it's a good positive statement, but we are moving forward and back out of our what has been a really interesting and challenging period. So I think I don't really need to say anything else in terms of that report. I'm very happy to propose it and look to Councillor Broadhead to second. Phil.
Yep, happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Again, as I said, very technical report. Are there any questions in particular on it, or members happy? Okay, none of it I'm seeing, so we will move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Okay, then that goes on to the agenda item 7, which is the Q2 performance report. Again, I'll be proposing, this is under my remit, so I'll be proposing this item. This just to give members and those watching a sort of reminder. So we have a suite key performance indicators, effectively, so how we're doing across our corporate priorities and our delivery plans. So we have targets, so we can see where we're achieving and where we need to focus energies further. This is we've effectively didn't have data, historic data for BCP as a council, as a whole council. So this is an emerging piece of work. We're now starting to get comparative information because we've run through this for a year, so we can have a look back previously. That's enabled us to be tighten up and evaluate some of our targets. The overarching performance here is really strong, and again it reflects the comment I made on the previous item. It really feels now we still absolutely do have COVID pressure and some issues in and around that, but if you look through the comparison from this set of key performance indicators to the previous quarterly report, it's definitely improving across the board, so that's very positive. We do have 4 areas in the report that are which we haven't hit our targets, so I'm going to the cabinet members responsible for those to talk through those now. So what I'll do first, can I come first to Councillor Mike White?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to make a few comments on the exception report, which relates to the percentage of repeat referrals in a 12-month period. These are referrals to children's social care. I'd just like to make the point we are comparing second quarter this year with second quarter last year. So we're really looking right August 2020 and comparing it with the year up to June, July, August 2021, and we're now, of course, in January 2022. Comment I would make is we have put a number of actions in place to address this, so I'm really very hopeful that this figure will certainly look better next time we come to look at it next quarter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mike, and I've omitted to go to our seconder, so I believe Councillor Phil Broadhead is seconding. Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to second. I'll keep it brief just to echo your sentiments in the vast majority of the areas, despite what has been a very challenging year for our communities, for our economies. We've seen a not insignificant improvement in performance, particularly a lot of the council areas. So good to see, apart from the 4 areas we're discussing today, but equally I'm confident speaking with those members and departments in hand, and they've got plans in those areas too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the 3 other areas that we will touch on is we've got an exception report around skills and learning. So learner achievement rates, we've quarter target was 87 and we've hit 83.3. We've got in relation to rough sleepers, which I'll bring Councillor Allen on in a minute. And then the third one is the adult carers. So marginally missed a target of 55% to 52.3%, and that's a percentage receiving advice or another service after an assessment. So we're not quite hitting our target there. I have Councillor Fear has that responsibility, and as I said previously, he's not unable to make today because he's attending another event for us. But his response to this was that number of carers counted for this is dependent on the assessment or review taking place within the year, and effectively there's a backlog of reviews from 2021. So we feel that on the ground this is improving, and we're actually delivering at and above the target, but we're just working through that backlog. So we have a strong degree of confidence that in the Q3 outturn we will be delivering on that. Perhaps I could come now to Councillor Allen to talk about rough sleepers. Hazel.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say that actually I think that the numbers that we had in the annual street count on the 17th of November were actually quite positive. We had a drop from 54 to 29, which is excellent news. There is seasonal variation. We do see an uptick in the number of people rough sleeping during the summer and into the autumn, and then it often drops around the winter time. But we've actually had a really big push over Christmas to try and protect people with the variant of Omicron coming forward, and that we know that actually our numbers have probably dropped again by roughly a third. We know who our rough sleepers are. They are being engaged with by our excellent partners, St Mungo's, and we're also trying to increase the number of people vaccinated to protect them against COVID. And just to say that, you know, we are really committed to this as a administration, and that we've got some excellent, most importantly, joint working through the Homelessness Reduction Board, partnership working, the forum, and we've got some very positive actions coming forward. It's mainly about joint working, everyone working together, talking together, health, housing, meeting individuals, vulnerable individuals, all their needs together in joined up care, and the focus of that is obviously the homeless health hub, housing hub that we're bringing forward. So although we may not be reaching the exact targets that have been set, I think that the general downward trend, when you look back over the last few years, is going in the right direction, and certainly recently we've done very well, and that is particularly around entrenched rough sleepers that have been out for a long time, and we are moving people on to excellent settled long-term accommodation. So there is some very good news behind these figures, and I think it's hard to, you know, see that with just numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Hazel. I think actually it's a reflection as well, isn't it? We can look at the targets because, you know, we know there's an element of seasonality in terms of the flat target across the year. Perhaps we should reflect that going forward in the targets. Okay, thank you very much for the huge work you're doing, and I'm really particularly excited about the health hub, which we're looking to bring forward to really, you know, extend our provision, you know, and really be proactive in around how we can influence, you know, life chances of these people, while also raising the standards of accommodation. Okay, so then I believe the last one we've got to talk to is learner achievement rates. So I will come to, in the first instance, Councillor Nicola Green to discuss. Nicola.
Thank you, Leader. I think, like a number of these reports, this reflects the uncertainty around COVID throughout the period. To be clear, Skills and Learning have done a terrific job at keeping people engaged throughout the pandemic period, but there was an inevitable drop-off, I think, in the achievement rates, and this obviously needs to be read alongside the participation rates, which have remained strong, but reflect the changes in people's approach to learning. Most of the courses have succeeded online, but there has inevitably been a change, and in trying to reach the people who we most want to engage through Skills and Learning, there has been this lower rate than we would have hoped to, but I think we got some confidence about that engagement continuing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I so now move to other wider members of the council. So please could I bring in Councillor Andy Hadley?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. we set up these sort of metrics while we were in control, and I think we recognise the real difficulty in collecting the information and in making it presentable in a way that is understandable. And I think it's good in the sense that it gives you the 4 priorities you've just talked about as being areas of concern to look at in more detail. But to your point, in terms of the targets, it would be really helpful to understand what the targets are that flip things over. So effectively, we've got numbers, and in some cases, we've gone from red to green or orange to green, and yet it seems that the numbers would indicate that performance has gone the other way. So perhaps it would be helpful if the targets as well as the performance were shown. So it's really just about the way that the report is formatted. It may overcomplicate it, particularly if, as you say, we change the target on a quarterly basis. But to understand whether the answer's been changed to meet the performance rather than a target that we then assess our output against. So it's not a criticism of the report really beyond the formatting. It's just how we make it understandable and make sure that we are really seeing an improvement where an improvement is shown. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I think a recognition probably the fact that we're building this up, aren't we? We started, and it's good work going in from you previously in terms of putting it in place. And now we need to just make sure it works better for us, don't we, in terms of how usable it is and the presentation. I'll take that specific point away, and I'll ask our Chief Exec, Graham Farrant, to make sure we land that in the right place to consider that. What we could also do is have a conversation at one of the group leader meetings to see if there's a group of people who want to actually spend some time looking at these targets for the next cycle as well, because I think collectively we need to own this document, don't we? So that it's really useful for us. So I'll personally make a note to do that as well. Thank you. Okay, move to Councillor Paul Hilliard. Paul.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, I was going to make a similar point, but also it would be interesting. Obviously, we had the resident survey, and I know it was quite high level, but they focused on a few areas. I'm just wondering if the scorecard and the RAG reflect anything which has been highlighted by the residents, that either for a greater focus or a change of RAG rating. Thank you.
I just missed the last part of that. Could you effectively just repeat that question?
Yeah. So obviously we did the resident survey, and we get continuous feedback from residents, complaints, etc. And also we know about staffing, that they can give feedback on how their service is performing and whatever. So all I wanted to understand is there a mechanism that this type of feedback from wherever has an impact on how you scorecard, how you RAG rate the different areas? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand the point now. Yeah, so effectively they're different things effectively, but we've got a really clear set of targets and key performance indicators which come down from our corporate strategy, delivery plans, and this is our performance on that. Separately, you're absolutely right, we do monitor, and we've actually sort of effectively stepped up the monitoring, particularly around the customer feedback piece. So that is separate. That effect all plays into it won't effectively change the RAG rating on these key deliveries, but it is part of our whole cycle. What to be a much more insights driven council, so we want to know what what residents are saying, what staff are saying, and to really inform our priorities. So that information, as I see it, helps at the top level, what we're trying to work out, and then reflect on every year what are our corporate strategy priorities. It's taken from what our staff are telling us and what the public are telling us, and then that will reflect into changing the plans, and then this is how we're delivering to them. So it's all in the whole ecosystem. I agree with you very much, and it's all in the whole ecosystem, but I don't think specifically, I think you're asking, do we put that into the KPIs? We more do it at the top. We should do it at the top, not as is in year, but it's a very valid point. Okay, Paul, was there anything else you wanted to add on that? Was that
that was fine, thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Do I have any other members wishing to speak on this item? So thank you very much everybody for their contribution. We will it's as put, so all those in favour please show. Thank you, that is unanimous. Okay, now we move to the Future of Stour Valley and Pool Revenues and Benefits Partnership. Okay, so it's an interesting paper. I'll just perhaps if I just do a brief bit of a background. So BCP Council currently works in partnership with Dorset Council to deliver our revenues and benefits services for the 4 legacy councils through the Stour Valley and Pool Partnership, so SVPP. There's a joint committee for SVPP, and what it was asked to effectively reflect on the future options for the revenues and benefits service delivery, and they've recommended to each council, so that's now Dorset Council and BCP Council. So it was 4 councils, we've amalgamated, so there are now 2 unitary councils that are reflected in this, and the joint committee was really clear that they recommend to each council that they consider expanding SVPP to provide a pan-Dorset partnership. So to go further, it's been a huge success, and to go further with it. As a council, and what I'm asking, as I'm tabling this report, is we endorse our position. And as a host partner, our position, is very much that we absolutely agree there's an opportunity to expand the partnership. It's been a success of it. And so we formally bring together the revenues and benefits services and deliver, quite significant efficiencies, whilst also supporting the council's transformation objectives. So that's our position as a council, and which I'm asking for support with today. Dorset Council have also had the same report and recommendation from the joint committee as us, and their cabinet has actually decided and on record as their preferred direction of travel is to end the SVPP, which I think it's fair to say we were disappointed in. So they want to return service to in-house position. So effectively what we need to do in this report is to endorse our preferred option of extending SVPP. And in terms of, if there is a dissolution, our position is we want to achieve an amicable dissolution of SVPP. But I think I'll just refer members to recommendation E, which is to acknowledge that if a amicable dissolution cannot be agreed with Dorset Council, we have a very clear contractual position, and our position is strongly that we will look to enforce that contract in its fullness. We do not believe that this is in the best interest of our residents or the wider residents of Dorset to disband this partnership, and if Dorset Council would like to do so, then there will be a contractual obligation there. So I think it's worth, when in presenting this, to make sure members are aware of of what we mean by E. Okay, so very happy to take questions and have a debate on an item, and I'll move to Councillor Broadhead to second. Phil.
Thank you very much for your points around the history of the SVPP and its history of success. It's been a function that's worked very well to date. It's highly regarded by many people, and there is the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I'd always go further, and if it works, expand it. So it is disappointing to see Dorset Council's proposed direction of travel. We would urge them to reconsider. However, as you pointed out, if that is not possible, we look forward to working with them in an amicable way to look at its how it could be dissolved. But equally, we have a contract in place there which has to be followed if that is not possible. So again, we would like to see what is working very well go further and continue that positive working relationship together, but we'll have to respond accordingly if that's not possible.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I think we're relatively clear position in terms of what this paper is. Do I have any members wishing to, so first of all, any wider members of council wishing to speak? And if no, I'm not seeing that, so I'll move to members of our cabinet. Councillor Brooks, Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's only a very small point for note. I'm parish councillor here in Highcliffe and Warkford, and we have had the service from SVPP, but unfortunately we're not satisfied with the service, and in fact we are making moves to actually withdraw from that and chart our own future in the way that we actually administer collections. That is an ongoing discussion which we will actually conclude very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution, Nigel. Do any other members or officers wish to speak on this item? I'm not seeing that. So what I'll do is we've got the recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you for your support, Cabinet. Okay, then that moves us on to agenda item 9, which is a housing and property compliance update. And I'll move to Councillor Karen Rumpton to propose. Karen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yes, this is the annual report to Cabinet on our performance in ensuring compliance in 6 areas within our housing, which is held in the housing revenue account. And just as a reminder, this is Bournemouth and Poole neighbourhoods only. We don't have any HRA stock in Christchurch. We have around 9,500 housing units, and the 6 areas of compliance are water quality, gas safety, asbestos, electrical safety, fire safety, and lift safety. There's legislation, there's regulation, and there's good practice governing these areas to ensure health and safety of residents. There are legal and regulatory changes ahead, which will impact significantly on social landlords and on this council's responsibilities and duties, and that's currently going to Parliament, and we expect it to be in place by 2023. The Building Safety Bill will create a new regulator within the HSE. There will be clearer responsibilities for the design and construction of higher risk buildings, and that will be those buildings which are over 18 metres or which have 7 or more stories. And once these buildings are occupied, there will be a new regulatory regime. They'll need to be registered. They'll need a building assessment certificate, a building safety manager to manage and prevent fire risks and to engage with residents. The Charter for Social Housing Residents and the Social Housing White Paper was published last year. And this puts greater emphasis on building safety and will introduce routine inspections. Both this white paper and the Building Safety Bill have emphasis on resident engagement on building safety, encouraging confidence when residents communicate with their landlords, ensuring they're listened to and helping them to feel safer in their homes. Some of BCP Council's existing and proposed homes will fall into the definition of higher risk, including the 6 existing tower blocks in Poole and the development of 4 high-rise blocks in Westbourne, and these will range between 6 and 9 stories. However, the definitions of higher risk may be subject to change, and other buildings might fall into this category. Members will be aware that the future delivery model of housing management is currently being considered. We have a member working party set up which is looking at this very carefully, and we're co-producing with our residents in both the Poole and the Bournemouth neighbourhoods. So the 2 neighbourhoods at present use the same health and safety legislation and best practice to ensure compliance with current standards, and there's regular meetings with each neighbourhood and between both. So some concerns with compliance have been identified during performance monitoring. An internal audit of the key compliance areas was already planned, but due to concerns, this has been brought forward and it's now underway. The audit will help to identify areas of improvement to our systems and practice across the 6 compliance areas. And I'm just going to run through those compliance areas. So water quality. There is no prescribed review period in law, but good practice means that regular checks in both neighbourhoods are carried out monthly, 6 monthly or annually to ensure water storage tanks are covered, water is clean and temperatures are measured. And in the main, this is to do with Legionella identification. Any remedial actions needed are complete in the Poole neighbourhood, but not all the monthly checks in Bournemouth have been possible, and that's due to access issues within some loft areas. There are 22 checks outstanding. We're putting in anchor points at this very moment, actually, to enable safe access. And the checks will, in future, from April, will be done by our in-house contractors rather than subcontracted. Gas safety, there are no outstanding issues in either neighbourhood. Asbestos, no areas of concern at this time. Electrical safety. If you're a private landlord, you're required to inspect every 5 years, but this doesn't apply to social landlords. Good practice, however, recommends test and inspection every 5 years. This programme of work was inevitably affected by the pandemic. The checks are very lengthy, and there was natural caution over going into homes. So the work was suspended and then it was restarted when possible. Nonetheless, a combination of this delay and system errors led to a substantial number of outstanding tests, 780. To put that number in context, 80% of the Bournemouth neighbourhood homes had a current satisfactory inspection. That number, I'm pleased to tell you, has now been reduced to 416 as of yesterday, with 190 further appointments made, and every effort is being made to ensure access to the remainder of homes. The majority of these outstanding tests are in the Bournemouth neighbourhood. The number in Poole has been reduced to 9, and 5 have appointments booked in. The other 4 being visited to ensure access to those homes in Poole. So this compliance issue means that potentially the council has not complied, and so in the interest of transparency, we self-referred to the regulator. Any requests that they made for information have been provided, and to date, no further action has been requested. Other measures were taken immediately, and I hope this will reassure Cabinet. They include visual inspections to communal areas, additional resource put in through private contractors to increase the number of testing and inspections. Our more vulnerable residents are prioritised. Fire alarms, emergency lights and door entry systems in our communal areas have been checked and tested. There's a really robust action plan in place, and I have regular meetings with the Director of Housing to progress this action plan. There are some outstanding fire risk assessments in the Bournemouth neighbourhood. 7 of these are high risk and they will be completed this month, and the rest are medium and low risk. So, Cabinet members, I would say that this report is, that's quite a lengthy speech from me, but it's a very, very important one. As I said earlier, there will be increased responsibilities from social landlords over the next few years. But by us proactively recognising and improving our recording and our monitoring procedures, we intend to get ahead of the curve. So I commend this report to Cabinet. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen, and yeah, well put. So I'll move to Councillor Broadhead to second. Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair. Happy to second, and thank you to Councillor Rampton for just a really full explanation and robust response to those issues. What I would say is that we have a really ambitious council housing delivery programme going forward, and the way that we can assure that we can provide the best services as possible in the future is to build as good quality as possible. And as it brings out in the report, a lot of the things that we have to constantly look at and manage the risk on are around gas safety, electrical safety, how the buildings are actually operated. And I'm really pleased that we have a really strong level now for the new homes that we're building. You look at only last night we approved a new scheme in Herbert Avenue. We're about to open a new scheme in Luckham Road, both of those passive house standards, and that means that there's actually a much more robust build quality as well, which helps us to provide the best possible service in the future. So really confident that we've got this in hand to ensure that we have the best possible stock, is to make sure we build them as best we can.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I've now moved to members of the wider council to speak before I bring Cabinet colleagues in, and I'll go first to Councillor Andy Hadley. Andy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just struck by something Councillor Rampton said around the water quality monitoring, because I'm sure I saw something a while back around our smart city work and the potential for using devices rather than forcing people to get into difficult loft spaces to monitor things like flow and quality of water. So I just wondered whether there is any progress in that work in terms of automating. It can be overstated in terms of the opportunities for smart work, but rather than anchor points, is there any chance of moving to automated or remote monitoring? Thank you.
I'll take Councillor Hilliard now, and then I'll come back to the moving secretaries later. Paul.
Thanks, Leader. Just obviously, I recognise, as Karen said, that there's issues with sometimes accessing properties or spaces, but in the report there's a clear difference between the PHP and the BCP management. And I'm just thinking, is there any work to be done to integrate the services to one model? Because Christchurch will have housing stock with regeneration, I hope, in the future. So it's what's the best model, and is there one model, or is the plan to continue as is? And the other thing is, Christchurch does have, whether it's leased or owned, it does have properties which residents are using, and I'm just wondering where those safety checks and water checks are recorded and reported on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, do you want to reply to those questions now, or I'll bring Cabinet colleagues in first and you sum up? What your preference? Please respond to those now, then I'll bring Cabinet in. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy and Paul, for your questions. Andy, in terms of smart devices, that's really interesting. As I say, we're not going to be using contractors as of April this year. It's going to be in-house. So that's certainly something that I'll be asking them to look at, because obviously it ensures safety for our in-house team as well, doesn't it? So thank you for that suggestion. Paul, in the housing management model, I think I said when I spoke, we're currently reviewing, excuse me, the model, and what we're trying to do is take the best of both. So all the bits that PHP do really well, and there are lots of bits that do really well, and of course the Bournemouth in-house housing model, management model has some areas of good practice as well. So we take the best of that, put it together, and create a service which is very resident focused and is well, just a really top quality service. That's the vision, and that is what we're going to achieve. In terms of the housing stock in Christchurch, obviously there's no council housing in Christchurch at this time because it went to a housing association some years ago. So they are social landlords, so they'll be subject to the same the same restrictions as we are in terms of this sort of testing regime. But I can certainly find out more for you if you would like me to.
Yeah, just to come back on that. So obviously we use bread and breakfasts, and there are some other properties which we house. So yeah, if you could come back on that outside, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And and I think it's a commitment in the big plan, and some stuff coming through around the smart places point to really push that and lead in our area. So I'm sure our internal teams will be looking at as well. Okay, thank you very much, councillors Hadley and Hilliard. Okay, I'll now come to our cabinet to comment, and I've got Councillor Dunlop first. Beverly.
Thank you, Leader. Just be very brief. It's unfortunate, obviously, the pandemic affected some compliance issues, and I see we're dealing with that really swiftly. But I really want to say, I think this is a superb paper. It's very detailed. It's very specific. It goes for a number of areas. Right down to the grassroots. I think it shows a huge commitment about how seriously we take the security and safety of our residents. And I would actually like to congratulate Councillor Rampton for getting ahead of the curve in this way. So thank you.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any other members wishing to speak. So, Karen, anything you'd like to say and sum it up?
Just that this is an annual report and it'll be going back to Cabinet in a year's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got recommendations as put. All those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so let's now move on to agenda item 10, which is the climate action annual report. Just before I bring Councillor Green, we've been notified. I come to Sarah Colwick of a question that was should have been directed at this meeting earlier. So, Sarah, perhaps you could explain and introduce that.
Thank you. Yes, I understand the question that I'm about to read out was submitted to overview and scrutiny, and the member of the public was encouraged to present it to today's Cabinet meeting. Unfortunately, I didn't get get the notification of that until this morning, so I'm going to read it to you now. The question comes from Mrs. Tees and is as follows. The global overheating tragedy accelerates. Crop failure, starvation, floods, fires, ocean acidification, landslides, tornadoes, effects are multiplying exponentially. We are all vulnerable. But Councillor Stribley, Echo Report 18th of 12/21, fails to explain to local motorists the deep urgency of the climate crisis, let alone show concern for the school children of the area on an extremely dangerous road, Tatnam. Despite financial government support, the approval of officers, the transport portfolio holder, head teachers, councillors and residents, the decision is inconsistently being reversed. The road kept open to polluting vehicles. Moreover, BCP still support deadly policies harmful to nature. How can BCP reassure us we'll be speedily protected? Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And Mike, perhaps you can reflect on that briefly in your introduction of the paper, and we'll make sure there's a full written answer going. I will just say, as much as we appreciate the question, the fact I believe last month we brought forward our biodiversity, policy, so we were actually leading the country in terms of, our standards in and around biodiversity. So the last part of the question I take a partial exception to. Councillor Green, perhaps you could introduce agenda item 10 and reflect on that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. Actually, maybe if I just address the question first of all, and we're obviously grateful for the contribution from Zoetis and her family, who are constantly and quite correctly reminding us about what our obligations are as far as as climate action is concerned. I think we were at the last meeting, Tatnam Road was very fully considered, and I would just refer the questioner to, if she would like to look back at the discussions that took place on it, both at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and at Cabinet, which I think were full and should answer those questions. If I can turn now to the paper here, it's in three parts. The first one is around our annual report for climate action between July 2020 and June 2021. It therefore necessarily looks backwards at what has happened, and it's been an unusual year, I think it's safe to say, for many of us, and that's reflected in the report that we have. It's been a transitional year as far as the council's concerned, as well as unusual. COVID has, of course, affected all of our lives, but particularly when we're trying to put together some figures for what has happened, etc. Then we need to understand that everything has to be taken with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But also, it was the year that when we changed the administration of the council from the previous coalition grouping to ourselves as taking it over. And for whatever reasons, and I don't really want to get into it now, unfortunately, at the time that we took over the council in November of 2020, the funding for climate action had been withdrawn by the previous administration. And that left us in a very, very difficult situation. And effectively, from a standing start, we needed to try to get to where we wanted to be. And although the very first action that we took, in fact, right at the beginning of our administration, we restored that funding, for which I'm extremely grateful. That pause has caused us a few difficulties because it's meant that we've been working from a standing start rather than the smooth acceleration that we hoped we would have. But I'm delighted to say, and I think that this report shows, that we are very, very much back on track now, and we are making great strides forward as far as climate action is concerned. And one of the first things that we needed to do, if we were to do so, is to ensure that we put in a correct structure on the officer side to ensure that that would match and be able to deliver on the ambitions that we've got. And so we have designed a structure bringing our team effectively from 2 full-time equivalents up to a team of 11, as it will be when it's fully filled. And I'm delighted that Dr. Matt Montgomery has joined us as head of climate action, and he'll have that team coming into him. And I wonder, Leader, if it's possible to bring, I know that Matt is on the call at the moment, but maybe you could just have a couple of minutes just to explain who he is and where he's come from, and maybe why he's decided to join BCP.
Great, and absolutely delighted to do that, and I wanted to welcome you myself again, Matt. So welcome, and we're delighted to have you. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself, Matt. Would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm delighted to be here. This is a place that I'm very fond of. I've just come back from Auckland Council, where I was the head of innovation, and just to reinforce, that's the world's most livable city. So what I'd love to be able to do is take some of the great things that we're doing there and implement them here to make this the world's most livable city region. Thank you.
Brilliant, and we're really excited to now to have you with us, and also and Councillor Green, thank you. The team we're assembling now, it really means we can actually start moving forward. Personally, I'm excited about what's coming in terms of our budget, which will get announced next Friday, and some significantly material things we're doing that to really address this really important agenda. Okay, what?
So, sorry, that was only a pause.
Oh, was it a pause? I do apologise. Yeah. Councillor Green.
So looking at the annual report itself, the headline figures are encouraging indeed. Our council's own emissions over the course of the year have dropped by approximately 11%. Of course, there is the element of this that we do not know yet how much of that might be down to COVID, but I think you can see from the actions that have taken place that we are very, very much moving in the right way, and we now have emissions equivalent to 37,000 tonnes of carbon, and our ambition is to ensure that by 2030 at latest that is down to net zero. That figure you'll see in the report is there with 10.7% drop in emissions. If we assume that, or if we take into account the fact that by switching over to a green electricity supply has saved that, but in line with the standard requirements now, what's becoming standard at least, we employ a dual accounting system for carbon, and you'll see on there that we've also recorded what the energy would be if we'd actually taken full emissions account of the electricity. But just to remind people that supply that we have is now based on 100% renewable electricity, and it is renewable sources, and it's certified to say so. So it's at the sort of gold standard of green tariffs, if you like. Within BCP as a whole geographical area, we also have an ambition to get to net zero by 2050 at latest, and you'll see in the report that the current figure is about £1.87 million. Now, when I say it's the current figure, it's the latest available, and that actually is for 2018, which has shown a 3.7% drop from 2017. So what we can see on that is that we remain, or certainly were at that time, on the right trajectory, and I believe that everything that we're doing means that we will see those figures improve year on year as we need them to do. In fact, and on both of those, it's probably likely that we are doing better than these reports suggest. For example, you'll see that the biggest part of the emissions equivalent that's coming from BCP's own operations comes from leased buildings. We know that we have made several improvements to the energy efficiency and indeed local generation on those buildings, and yet that is not reported in here. And you'll see that we have recorded exactly the same emissions from a conservative point of view that we had for the previous year. So I think where we get to on this is that we can afford at least a cautious pat on the back to ourselves. We are heading in the right direction, but I think that it's just a little bit too early, given that we don't know what the full effects of COVID have been in bringing this back, to be jumping up and down for joy. The second part of this paper is our climate action plan, which I am asking Cabinet now to endorse so that we can bring it forward to Council as a whole. Again, it's based on those twin targets that we have of 2030 to bring the Council's own operations down to net zero, and 2050 at latest for the entire area of BCP. This action plan was based on the draft that was agreed by Council in December 2019, but it has been tweaked since then. And I believe will continue to be tweaked. It's done so because of emerging guidance, which is mostly the Ashton Friends of the Earth guidance that's come through. but particularly also because of the public engagement exercise we went into in January of last year, where we've heard what the public wanted to say, and we have injected that together with our own priorities and policies to ensure that we've come out with something which I think is a much more robust plan that we had previously in draft form. What you will see that's happened on that is that we are concentrating very much now on carbon, which I think is, we need to make sure that we're not just going off in all directions as we had done previously, and to try to get it in a much more focused and structured way. So we're concentrating on that, and as we go through the plan, you'll also see that we're concentrating on value for money, effectively making sure that the carbon that we're saving, we're doing so in the most financially efficient way, but also ensuring that any money that we will be putting into this, the climate change agenda, we try to get the biggest bang for our buck effectively by reducing carbon down to in the best way that we possibly can. The action plan has been subsectioned into 5 different themes now: energy and buildings, planning and land use, travel and transport, nature and waste, and the council's own operations. And obviously there's necessarily going to be some crossover between those. But for each of those 5, I've formed cabinet member support groups, which are cross-party groups of members, assisted very ably by officers. And they're going to be helping me to make the decisions on each one of those sections, to ensure, I hope, that we're on the right trajectory to hit our targets, and also to make sure that we evolve those actions as we go forward to ensure that they're fit for purpose right the way through. But I think one of the things that these groups are particularly doing is to ensure that we have a structure in our work and that we're actually achieving rather than just shouting about things. So I'd particularly like to thank not just the officers but the members who have already been involved in those groups for work that they have done and also the work that they are doing. The other big development that you'll have seen on the Climate Action Plan is that we now have red, amber, green, rag statuses for what's going forward. And again, I think this is the sensible way of being able to judge ourselves and allow other people to judge on how we are progressing towards those targets. So a much more business-like approach than we've had in the past. And the last part of this report talks about our ambition, or asks Council to ask Cabinet to approve that we should explore membership of the UK 100 group. And what this is it's a network of highly ambitious local government authorities which are looking to transition to clean energy in a way that takes the public and the businesses with them as they do so. And I think what it really shows is that in looking to join this group and being able to share good practice with them, it's a recognition that we are now at that stage where we could be considered a leader in our ambitions on climate action. And I think that is something that's developing rapidly and something that I'm very proud of. One example of that is the Carbon Disclosure Project, which looks at how authorities all over the world are reporting their carbon and make sure that they're doing so in the right way. They've A-rated only 11 city regions in the UK, and we are one of them. In fact, there are only 95 in the whole world. So as we go forward with this group, I'm hoping that as we do, we will also be able to look towards joining the leadership group of that as well, which is even more ambitious and potentially to be bringing in our target for net zero to 2045 too. So that's something that over the next year, I hope we're going to be able to do. So I'll leave it there if that's okay, Leader, and we'll obviously answer any other questions that we've got.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Green. I'll come to the seconder, which is Mark Anderson. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to second this paper. I'd like to just mention a couple of items on it. The first thing is the very very great effect that some of the work that Councillor Green and myself have already done in the fleet sustainability work that we did. We've managed to get a reduction of 90% of the carbon emissions for the council's fleet just purely by looking at the way that the fleet operated, changing to some of the residual waste collection vehicles to electric, and more importantly, we have introduced the use of hydro-treated vegetable oil, and just those two items have reduced the carbon emissions by 90%. I also thought it would be useful to mention that our new waste residual contracts have had a dramatic decrease in the mileage that our waste travels from here to final disposal, and also that our three main contractors have now made a pledge to either go for zero or negative carbon emissions. So I think that's all great. And also, just to continue on the mileage carried out by our waste, I should remind everyone that our green wood, food waste and street sweepings are all treated locally in the conurbation. I also thought it's probably useful to just mention briefly some of the work that's happening in the nature part of this report, and the nature and the biodiversity and the work that's going forwards. And it's quite interesting that the Nature Capital account produced by Vivid Economics has estimated that our parks and open spaces are worth £231 million per annum in benefits to us. And I also thought I should also mention the work of the Future Parks programme, where we're trying to make the community parks more sustainable, and also the fact that we have a nature recovery project working with 8 parks, and we have also managed to plant 5,000 trees as part of the Urban Tree Challenge Fund, which was done last year. So I think there's work going on and going forward that's of great use and news to us, and also we've done an awful lot in the past year as well. So I think that Councillor Green does himself a disservice to say that we haven't had a chance to do much. I think we've done a very good job, and I think we continue, and I'm very pleased to see Matt has also come on board. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. And how exciting is it, what we've got planned and where we're going to go with it from here? So absolutely. Okay, what I'll try and do now is bring in the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Board, Councillor Stephen Bartlett. Had a really fulsome discussion, and it was a really interesting session. Steve, perhaps I can come to you now to talk to this paper in a session you chaired.
Yeah, good morning, Leader. Good morning, Cabinet. Yes, it was a very long session, very interesting session, but we don't actually have any specific recommendations for Cabinet this morning. I'd just like to explain the background to this and explain where we're going with this from this point onwards. Firstly, the intent was to scrutinise this specific climate action annual report prior to Christmas. That was then to be followed by what we called a climate inquiry, where we would be looking at the much broader issues of the climate emergency across the conurbation, and to include what the council's doing for itself and its own organisation, but also in the greater part of the community as well. So unfortunately, this cabinet report was deferred through to January, and so we needed to do this scrutiny before we did the inquiry. So in the end, we decided to combine the two in one meeting. That meeting was constructed in 3 parts. The first part was to scrutinise this report. The second was the climate emergency inquiry. And then the third part was a review of both parts of that and come up with any recommendations or actions for the way forward from that point. Unfortunately, this was a step too far. The ambition was a bit too great. Not surprising, given the extent to which this subject reaches out across the whole of the council and the whole of the conurbation. So we have some interesting bits, but we unfortunately ran out of time. We ran out of people, and I think it's fair to say, particularly Mike Green, who we kept going for at least 4 hours non-stop, we ran out of some energy as well. So we got to a point where we really couldn't proceed to go any longer, and we've decided to defer the last section of that meeting to our meeting on the 1st of January, where we may or may not come up with recommendations for Cabinet at that point. Having said that, there was some really good stuff coming out of the report, and we're very encouraged by some aspects of it, and so, indeed I think some issues that were raised by the Overview Scrutiny Board were accepted by the portfolio holder and officers, and actions are being taken to include those suggestions in the report. I won't go into those in detail. They have been provided to the portfolio holder. Now, I think one thing that is worth saying is that we are very encouraged by the appointment of Dr. Matthew Montgomery as head of climate, and we welcome him. And we welcome also the establishment of the larger team. We look very much forward to working with them on the way forward. We will clearly be inviting them to our next session on the 31st of January for the roundup session on the climate emergency. So I think that's all I really need to say at this moment, Leader. So thank you very much, and we look forward to bringing this back to you in due course.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you again to you and your committee, and also again to Councillor Green for really was a significant and detailed piece of work at ONS. So very useful. Okay, great. So now I can move to members of the wider council to come in first before I open up to cabinet colleagues, and I've got Councillor Hadley. Andy.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I don't want to repeat what was all that was said in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, because I contributed to that as a general member of the council. But it was agreed that this is much bigger than party politics, and something that we need to contribute within the BCP area to survival of the human species in the planet, and it is that serious. So it's really disappointing that Councillor Green started his introduction by repeating the untruth. The Unity Alliance did not cancel the climate change budget. We reluctantly deferred the increase in that budget because we were in the very early stages of COVID, and there was no guarantee that funding would be forthcoming. There were some vague promises from government, which then have materialised and have been really beneficial to the council in terms of helping us balance the books. But we felt it was prudent at the time to defer the increase. It was not cancelled by the Unity Alliance, and he keeps on repeating that, and it is wrong. So that's really unfortunate. I think that the other thing that's unfortunate is and again, it was acknowledged in the meeting, our progress has been modest for lots of reasons, including obviously the impact of COVID and responding to that. But we set a target for 2030, and that's not very far away, and we've only made 10% progress. And two numbers that really struck me. One was we only reduced our gas use by 3%. And our electricity use by 30% at a time when all of our office buildings were empty. And so there is something about the, why didn't we turn off the heating or turn it right down just to preserve the buildings? We did have some staff in, and there are operations that obviously need to carry on. But that's a very stark thing for me. The other is it's not just about carbon reduction, it's about mitigation against climate change, because the climate is already changing, it's getting more extreme. Our drainage systems are getting overwhelmed with heat waves. We saw in previous heat waves in France, significant number of deaths amongst people. We need to mitigate and respond to a climate that is already changing because of 20 years of too little action. And we also need to remember the ecological aspects and as preserving the security of diversity of other species in the BCP area, which is really important. So those elements need to be brought forward. I think we need a strategy that looks at the headline figures that we have and says, what are we really doing about that? Because we've come up with, and again, we came up with them as Councillor Green said, but 157 items, but that isn't the top level. We really need to get more strategic in terms of how are we going to get to 2030 targets and actually achieve them, because I don't think we're on track for that. I also don't think we're a leader in the pack. The UK 100 has 112 UK councils already on it. So joining that, actually, we should have done that a long time ago. It's been in existence for 10 years, but we won't be a leader. We'll be joining those councils. And similarly, there's 61 UK authorities across political spectrum on the net zero pledge, which is about doing it as fast as we can for the benefit of our residents and the benefit of the wider planet. And there's also the United Nations Race to Zero, which again, if we want to be seen as a leader, then we should be joining that. So I do hope that Cabinet will go further than just thinking about joining the UK 100, but commit to doing it and commit to net zero, and ideally commit to the Race to Zero too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hadley. Comments both now and also in the debate. I do need to come back in with my hat on as for the leader of this council, this administration, and also more particularly in relation to the finance brief. I'm going to be, as polite as possible because I believe we need to move the political discourse of this whole council forward. But we repeatedly, come up with this conversation. What the facts are that the Unity Alliance did cut the budget for climate. However you want to phrase it, stop the spend. No pounds or pence went out of the building in climate in that year around you. Whether that's cut, pause, whatever, you took money out of it. We immediately put money back in. We then doubled it. And now we've made it permanent. And now look, and we were looking with excitement as to what we're going to do with the budget for further in 22-23. So it's this Conservative administration that is leading on climate. We also hear you've said we should have joined the 100 Club years ago. You were a member of a cabinet for 18 months, previously, and your administration did not join that club, and that's what we're looking to do. So as much as I respect and appreciate your comments, I think we need to be clear on what's said, and we also need to be factual. And that's exactly what I've just been. But thank you very much for your considered comments. Okay, so I don't have any other members of the wider cabinet wishing to speak, so I will look to cabinet to speak, and our first person I've got is Councillor Duff. Bobby.
Good morning and thank you. And may I just say thank you so much for reinstalling this budget that had been cancelled under the previous administration. As a mum of a young family, it's extremely heartening to know it's in safe hands and that my children will have a future which is brighter and greener. And under that remit, I'm so pleased that I'm not now having to move to Woking so that I can live in one of the towns that is being described as the top 10 in the Times list, an area that focuses on places and makes the best of both worlds in terms of family areas, parks, schools to be proud of, arts, leisures and facilities. And I'm so pleased we're bringing that to the BCP area. And on that then, please, and this is for the portfolio for Dr. Montgomery, if they could tell us more about what it means to be living in one of the most livable town or in city regions, please, and the progress that we will be taking in order to get there.
Great, thank you. I do have other members to speak, but I'm really keen to that we sort of introduce Dr. Montgomery a bit further to this council. So perhaps we could go immediately on this point. A really interesting question. So perhaps talk about if the portfolio wants to come back in to sum up. Then anything further can be added. So please.
Thank you, Leader. It's a great question. Thank you very much. And I just want to point out that in the time that I was in Auckland, we were at number 3 in the league table before COVID hit, but COVID really jumped us up to number 1. And one of the reasons for that was our comprehensive public health response and in making sure that everybody stayed safe and were protected and supported in being in their own bubbles. I do take some pride in the fact that I was the chair of the Corporate Resilience Task Force for COVID, and so I did play a role in that. However, I think the things that really pushed Auckland above some of the other cities and held it there consistently were some of the issues and some of the strengths that BCP also holds. One of the great things about Auckland is the number of beaches and the sustainable natural environment and access to wildlife that it holds. However, it has challenges in water quality, much as the region does here. In Auckland, it was due to both the water companies not really performing to their best and to agricultural runoff and construction runoff. I'm sure you can see some of the similarities there. There were perfectly good things put in place there that can help here too. So I'll be very keen to share some of them. Some of the other things really was a good public access to transport, both mass transit and active transport. The problem with the city there, though, is it's very sprawled, and so it's very hard to get consistent and reliable public transport, which is financially viable. I don't think we'll have that problem in BCP, but we are geographically constrained a bit more. And I think one of the things that we can look at as a strength here too is a robust housing delivery plan. Auckland has an acute housing problem, but the plan to be able to get it into place and get it back to where it should be was really quite impressive. And I think this is what we're seeing here in BCP as well. So the last thing that underpins all of that, which really helped push us up to the quality of life, was our future-looking and far-reaching climate action plan. And this is to make sure that, much to Councillor Hadley's comments as well, is that we are both adapting to the problems that are being created by climate change and mitigating some of the causes of it, to make sure that our children and ourselves have a future which is both sustainable and enjoyable, I think, is the most important part for that for me. So that's where I'll leave it for the time being. I suppose the only other part to mention is that there was a really successful urban regeneration programme that was being led there, and I can see some of the good parallels here too. So I'm very encouraged that this is a great opportunity for us to really promote BCP.
Great, thank you ever so much. That's fantastic. Councillor Dodd, was there anything else you wanted to contribute to that point?
Thank you very much, Dr. Montgomery, for that explanation. And as I said, it all revolves around our big plan, really, doesn't it? Our parks, our schools to be proud of, arts, leisure facilities. So thank you so much. I'm really pleased, instead of just talking about it and creating hot air, we're actually getting on and we're actually doing something that will deliver for our residents. Thank you.
Absolutely great. Thank you very much, Councillor Dove, and I completely agree. It does absolutely mean by our big plan for a modern, world-class city region. Okay, thank you. So I'll now move to Councillor Nicola Green.
Thank you, Leader. And I'm very pleased that we're taking this serious approach to tackling climate change. I spoke last night at Council about the golden thread of our cleaner, greener, safer agenda, which runs through all our work. And this paper speaks to the really to the very heart of it. It is a serious paper, as I've mentioned, and it deals with those big issues. And I'm sure we were all enthused by the ambition that Matt Montgomery has set out for us. I thought that Cabinet were fairly ambitious, but I think we've been given a little more vim to take us forward. As expected, I think wherever this agenda is discussed, somebody will always suggest that there's more we can do, and they're right. I think the discussion in overview and scrutiny, and as has been mentioned by Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Hadley this morning, is that there is always more to do. It's not tinkering, there is a lot more to do. And it's only right that we have those conversations and we continue to develop the agenda. But it does demonstrate how engaged everybody is on this, and I really, really welcome that enthusiasm. This paper, however, to speak to it, sets out the counterpoint to what it is we can all do as individuals. And clearly we all have those responsibilities in making changes to our own behaviour. The counterpoint is to what the council can do in terms of its place leadership role, and I think this paper really, really lands that. It articulates where we are and the way forward, noting that this is a non-negotiable priority for us all. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much. I'll now move to Councillor Broadhead. Phil.
Thank you very much. Just a little bit to add on this. I'd echo the points of how useful it was to have the Overview and Scrutiny Board meeting the other day. Credit to Councillor Mike Green for spending 4 hours on that, but it is a very important subject, and I know that some of the members there with their pet projects gave them a bit of a rough ride and got a bit hot under the collar, but I think their points aren't true. We're keeping our climate agenda on a really short leash, and if you look at all of the things that we're doing, that I think that joining the UK 100 Club is a really positive move. Our investment in our fully electric bin fleet, as the leader said, our work on our biodiversity net gain, which will be one of the first in the country. Really pleased to see the appointment, which I think is an absolute coup, of Dr. Montgomery, as well as the climate issues that are going to go into our local plan. And only this week we've launched our issues and options consultation document, where we're going to be seeking the public's views on how far they want us to go, or how much further, should I say, that they want us to go, before we actually embed that into our planning policy. And that's one real place where we can make the real difference. So we want to do this properly. We don't want to end up in the doghouse, and I'm really pleased that the work that's going into this. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Okay. I don't believe, let me just check, I don't believe we've got any other Cabinet members wishing to speak. So I will now ask the portfolio holder to come back in. Mike.
Thanks very much. And if I can just sum up some of the things that have been said, I'd appreciate that. Leader. First of all, thank you to Mark for bringing in some of the particular examples that we've done, and I very much hope that as we go forward over the next year or so, there'll be more and more examples that we'll be able to point to, and the Climate Action Plan should be able to guide us in that one. Bobby, I think it's really useful that you sort of made it rather real. What we've got here is pieces of paper saying what we plan to do, etc., and targets and rags, etc. But in the end, it does come down to what we are doing for our children and for our grandchildren as we go through in making the place a greener place and a better one for them to live in. I think Councillor Nicola Green had this absolutely right when he said this is a non-negotiable part of the work that we are going to do. And I would thank, as Phil said, the overview and scrutiny session was a long and gruelling one. I was certainly hounded by one or two members as they pursued with their own agendas and their own questions on there. But I do think, Steve Bartlett, that he was able to bring everyone together on that, and I thought it was an incredibly useful session, and I appreciate the words that Councillor Bartlett's just said to us here as well. Moving on to Councillor Hadley's points, I've got the greatest respect for Andy, and he's been very useful in the work that he has been doing, and indeed as part of my cabinet member support group on travel and transport with all his expertise. But I also feel that I need to bring up what he had to say about the finances and about the money that was available for climate action. I was very careful in my introduction to this paper to try to downplay why that might have happened, but it would absolutely have been wrong not to point out the position that we were put in by that money being withdrawn. It meant that we had to start from a standing position when we should have been accelerating on in the way that we all across the council had decided we wanted to do. We declared the emergency, and we then stopped doing anything about that. And I don't know what Councillor Hadley's role is within his job, but what I do know is that when you go out and try to employ people with this, having this stop-start approach, it is extremely difficult to do and to ensure that you get the right people in place. So I have to echo what others have said, that we are so lucky to have been able to get Dr. Montgomery into this. I would have liked to have had him and others in place the 6 months beforehand, but that pause in the money, whether you call it a cancelling or a deferral or whatever you call it, is what has put us in this difficult position. So I didn't want to make something about it, but I'm afraid if Andy and others are going to, then I'm going to continue to do so as well. Moving on to the more practical elements of what Andy was saying, was Councillor Hadley was saying, yes, we do need to investigate why the figures that we have at the moment only show a 3% drop in the gas that was used. I'm imagining that is going to be because of the very broad area that we are looking at gas usage, and it's not just the buildings that the officers are working from, but that and the electricity use, we do need to dig further into that to continue to ensure that we are on the right trajectory. And as Councillor Hadley says, we do need to spend quite a bit of time on the mitigation against climate change, because we know that this is coming forward. We know that there will be issues around flooding, around heat waves, etc., and we need to make sure that we are on top of them and able to cope with them as we do so. My point is, though, that we do, as a council, want to concentrate mostly on the one element, which is carbon reduction. And the reason for that is pretty much, as Councillor Hadley said, that we need to be more strategic. And what we have had historically is quite a scattergun approach. to this, where everything that is working on climate action is a good thing, and let's not bother about what the costs are, etc. By putting this structure in place, by making sure we are focused in what we are doing, and that the team is aiming in exactly the same direction, I believe that would be far, far more effective. And that's where I wanted it to be, and I believe we are very close to being there right now. So I think if I can just end, Chairman, on one thing on which Councillor Hadley and I very much agree, was his first statement, was that this is a much bigger topic than party politics can afford it to be. And I think my answer on that, and the way that I put it forward, is that as this administration, we have moved on from the failures of the past. I think it's time that everyone around the council did the same, and we'll all be able to work together as we do so. Thank you, Leader. So I'll move those recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely, and I wholeheartedly agree, and particularly that last statement. It's time to move on and be positive and proactive, and to continue to deliver. Thank you. Okay, so we have the recommendations as put. I'll ask all those members in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, let's move to bring my agenda back up. We're moving now to agenda item 11, which I'm really excited to see, is the paper on levelling up. Councillor Broderick, I believe you're technically proposing this, and I'm seconding this. Is there anything you want to say? Let's go to
Formally proposing, but this is Councillor Johnson's paper, so it suggests that he does the introduction. Thank you, Chair.
Great. So for the record, I'm seconding the paper. Can I just say, in introducing this, really delighted. Thank you for hitting the ground running, Toby. Welcome to presenting your first paper to Cabinet, and looking forward to working with you on it, Toby.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and introducing this. So just firstly, just to perhaps give a little clarification, certainly what I think this levelling up is about. There are many questions and many people are not quite sure. So I think my personal view is that it is investment in the areas that need it most, and to ensure that our residents are on as level a playing field as possible, and working towards eliminating the infrastructure inequality that has pervaded so many areas over the years. And as such, this paper is, I think, a very important step for our levelling up journey within BCP. We're one of the first councils to have a Cabinet Plus member like myself on this subject, one of the first to produce a paper on it, and progressing this as we are doing will mean we're putting ourselves in prime position to capitalise on what is a flagship government policy. And what this paper is about is getting ahead of the game and making sure we're not caught on our heels waiting desperately and slowly for the white paper when it comes out. We have to ensure that we are proactive on an area of policy that could make such a massive difference to our conurbation, and making the case for further levelling up in our area, and ensuring that we're not left behind in the discussion, and furthering the excellent work that we've already been doing. And the report does point to many examples of the work that's already been done, including the £21 million already secured for redeveloping Boscombe and regenerating Boscombe. And so our intention in this paper is to capitalise on the levelling up white paper when it comes out, and when it is released, to boost and bolster what we're already doing. And we must continue to address the inequalities that are set out in this report. As you will see in there, there is a massive difference between our most affluent areas and our most deprived areas. 1 in 10 of our BCP residents lives within the 20% most deprived areas in England, and this is something that we have to work to stamp out. The stats in the State of BCP report, which is referred to in this paper, back up the issues and back up this that we have the same issues in BCP that are present in the areas of the north where so much funding has been directed to eliminate these issues, and we must make the case that we have the exact same issues, and therefore we are just as deserving of this funding as they are. And this is also going to be about ensuring that it's not only aimed at the short term, perhaps more glamorous issues. This is about directing things at our young people and ensuring that the education inequality that is present is addressed as soon as possible, and ensuring that our young people are able to grow up and level up their communities themselves by making sure that they have the skills they need to flourish and improve their areas just by their own performances. I think one of the most important parts of this is also bringing the wider members in with a member seminar to ensure that every single part of the council, every single part of our conurbation is represented, and that their residents are all represented by their elected representatives. And I look forward to seeing that come in and listening to everyone's views on where we think that this should be targeted. And there I will close. Thank you very much, Leader.
Absolutely great. Thank you very much, and really good explanation of where we are and where we're going. Okay, so this wasn't at overview and scrutiny, so I don't have any members of wider council looking to speak on this paper. So I will come to any members of cabinet who wish to speak. Do I have any? So first of all, I'll go to Councillor Kelly-Jane.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think I'm sufficiently turned on now. Is that right?
We can hear you. Great.
Brilliant. So really pleased to speak on this paper. It's something that I'm working on every day, actually. Levelling up is something that we take very seriously, as the ethos behind the somewhat jargonish term, sorry, Toby, but it's not something that everyone understands. Behind this term affects all of our communities, in that we need and want to ensure that our residents are given every opportunity to thrive and prosper. Our strength-based way of working in specific localities is exactly that. We tease out those great skills, abilities and the environments that already exist and build on them, enabling the realisation of all the ambitions that previously people thought were not possible for them. Equality of ambition and opportunity for everyone is our aim in all parts of the conurbation, both socially and employment-based. We're currently working with a globally leading expert on community building to make sure that our staff are working to best practice. We're also working with third sector and business partners to give breadth to our approaches and confidence in members of the community. Health and well-being is so dependent on a feeling of achievement, belonging and pride in the place that you live. Again, prosperity is dependent on a population which enjoys health and well-being as far as is possible. It's also dependent on collaborative living, caring for those in need, and giving genuine opportunities and a strong voice to those who often fall through the more traditional nets. The results of this State of BCP report held within the paper are really interesting and helpful to contribute to the development of our work plan as we move forward with this work. Statistics are always useful tools, but we must constantly continue to engage with and listen to the most informed of our voices, those of the residents themselves. So I wait with interest the government white paper when it's published, and in the meantime, I know that collectively within this council, we will all continue to work on the ground to enable our residents to thrive. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and well put, Jane. Okay, I've got Councillor Hazel Allen and then Councillor Karen Rampton. So Hazel.
I'd just like to echo everything that Councillor Kelly has just said, and I also significantly welcome this paper. I think that there's so much within our communities and our businesses where they really do want to step up and support all the work that the council often leads on and voluntary services often lead on, and it's enabling that collaborative working, and I think that's so important. And you know, as you know, I work with some of the most marginalised and vulnerable individuals in our society, and we're only going to support them if our community is stronger, because then we overall offer just a better potential for everybody. So and it just allows the whole of our community to support everybody, right down to the most vulnerable and the most marginalised. So I just think this is excellent, and I agree with Toby's reference of, you know, let's get ahead of this and let's understand. Let's not mind what the jargon is. Let's understand what the real principles are, and they are that we are going in there and trying to build on asset and what that community has. I think it's very easy to feel that everything belongs to statutory council, and that's just not going to land things. We need to bring everybody on board. So I just think it's excellent. Thank you, Leader.
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor Rampton, Karen.
Yes, thanks, Chair. And I just want to say thank you to Councillor Toby Johnson. I absolutely support this paper. I'm really pleased to see it. I'm the chair of the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Health and Wellbeing Board. And the purpose of the Health and Wellbeing Board is to improve health and wellbeing and to reduce inequalities. That's not just about health, physical and mental health, is it? And that's about those wider determinants. It's about housing, it's about education, it's about skills. And the report talks about life expectancy, which is around 80s. For one thing, it can't be right that if you live 5 miles apart, you've got 10 years potential life expectancy less because of that distance between you. The other thing to remember is that's life expectancy. That's not healthy life expectancy. That can be as low as mid-60s, and that is something that we absolutely are working on, and I need to continue doing so. So my other hat is, as you know, is housing, and I'm really pleased that we've got such an ambitious house building programme going on, and we're aiming to improve those standards, as Councillor Broadhead referred to earlier. We've also got, or we're going to have, more robust monitoring and enforcement in our private sector housing, because we need to improve living standards. So if you're a poor landlord, I don't mean poor as in financially poor, but if you're a bad landlord, then watch out, because we're actually, we're coming for you, because people are entitled to have decent living standards. And just to echo what Councillor Jane Kelly was doing, she's doing so much work around asset-based community development, and that's part of this, isn't it? That is absolutely involving our communities and helping each other to level up. So thank you, Councillor Johnson. Thank you, Leader.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I've got Councillor Nicola Green and then Nigel. So Nicola first.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to all the other speakers. Well, levelling up is a relatively new term. Actually, it's not a new concept to any of us, either within this council or within the predecessor councils. We've actually been very confident, I think, at articulating the difficulties that there are for some of our residents and some of our communities. And I'm very, very pleased that Councillor Ampton as chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, is continuing to push that agenda along with our partnerships. And there is a very strong basis within the place leadership that exists not only through the Health and Wellbeing Board, but through many other arrangements that we have. But I think it's important to say as well that we're not starting this journey from zero. Actually, there's an awful lot of this work which is embedded within the DNA of this administration. And once you start writing lists, it's very difficult to know where to stop. But actually, with very little forethought, I just started writing down some notes. Inclusion within schools. That's absolutely vital to making sure that everybody has that the access to the right education for the right people, looking for the right skills. Our skills agenda, leading to the setting up of the Skills Commission, will reap some of those benefits. We're building homes for local people. We work with local employers, and I think this concept of levelling up explains why we do that, because a thriving economy means jobs, it means prospects, it means access to leisure facilities for all our residents, all our communities. We've been confident and assertive in moving forward in supporting the Poverty Truth Commission, saying let's hear what is not working well. Let's hear from the people who are affected by this, because as Jane was saying, they are the people who best know that, and we need to hear what they're saying. Likewise, there has been terrific support for many of our communities through the very difficult times of COVID, harnessing the massive power of the volunteers. And I will always make this point that this has been, I think, a great strength of this council, of our predecessors, and something that we've built on as well in setting up the Together We Can programme and moving that forward and allowing it to become a living, breathing organism, which responds to what it is that our communities tell us they need, and particularly in the public health space, ensuring that the trusted voices agenda enabled the messages that are coming out from the council, from public health, from all authorities actually resonates with people. It's no point, there is no point just saying the same thing in the same way again and again and expecting people to listen. We need to make sure that that message lands and that it is community led. So this is great. Cleaner, greener, safer. That's all about reaching all of our residents. It must be something that everybody can access, or it is purposeless. So, Toby, all power to your elbow. Really looking forward to seeing this delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicola. And I'll now bring in Councillor Nigel Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have on my other screen the dashboard, which is actually put together by the Key Cities and Core Cities Future of Urban Centres. On page 161, I do commend those tuning in and members to actually look at it, because it does bring together a lot of key information which actually gives you a very clear picture of BCP area and our residents and the dynamics that are going on. Sorry, it's more data, but things that stand out there are to do with innovation jobs, to do with green jobs by 2030, and they're quite striking in comparison to the cohort of other cities that have been put into the report. It shows quite clearly that there are job opportunities, and I hope with leadership from BCP Council that we can actually bring people towards those jobs, be it actually pointing them to where training is an opportunity to put them in a place to actually go into a job in these areas. But it also shows quite graphically the areas which are judged as having a degree of depreciation. So as a dashboard, I'm going to look at this quite closely as it's updated. Clearly, there's a time lag from when the data was put together, but it's a very good way of seeing quite quickly a trend and also seeing how we're actually moving. And then that can be supported by other data, as we're hearing from Karen and others, as well as Toby. So I look forward with interest to how we actually move forward. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nigel. I don't have any other colleagues wishing to speak, so I'll come back to technical proposer and also Toby. Feel first. Anything you'd like to come in on?
Quite uncharacteristically, Chair, so many of my colleagues have said all of the things that needed to say that there isn't really much to add. I'm actually really proud, if for want of a better word. We all clearly get this. We're all clearly on the journey. And what I love is that we are so much further than other areas. There's a tendency for some local authorities, particularly the ones that aren't in the north or northwest of England, to worry about levelling up. And because they're worried, they just want to make sure that levelling up agenda is just not levelling down for them. I mean, how unambitious is that? And as Councillor Johnson pointed out, we have some real challenges in this area, but we also have some tremendous opportunities as well. And the very fact that we're one of the first councils in the country to get ahead of the game and make sure that we've got all of this data in the right place so that when that white paper is released, we can react, I think puts us in a great position for our residents to move to the future, because this isn't just the government's agenda. This is everybody's agenda. And one of the things that I'm really the most proud of is when we're putting together this report already, without telling instructing that we needed to, we've got a tremendous amount of data and analysis for where we're working and where we're not working. None of the particular appendices in this paper were commissioned for this particular cabinet paper. They were all there already, be it the state of BCP report that we've talked about, which is a really comprehensive high level look at all of the different aspects across the whole of BCP. The COVID impact assessment, which really dives deep into not just COVID itself, but all of the other issues that we face. And indeed, as Councillor Brooks pointed out as well, the dashboard for the Future of Urban Cities report, which I led on behalf of Key Cities, which is a really useful tool to find out not just where we're doing well or where we're not doing well, but crucially to compare it to other areas as well. Because if we can look at some of our comparator authorities and cities around the country, and they're doing better at something than we are, then we have a duty to correct that. So I think we're in a great spot. As Councillor Johnson says, we're not standing still. We're absolutely ready on the starting line. And when the government releases that paper, we'll be sprinting to the finish and hopefully end up in first place. I may have taken that analogy too far, but thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. And I come back to Councillor Johnson to sum up. Thank you.
No, thank you, Leader. Just briefly, I won't repeat anything of what my colleagues have already said, and I thank them for their support. I would just like to direct a quick thank you to the officers who did put together this report, as it is a tricky one, given that the white paper hasn't come out yet. And I believe they've done a very good job of ensuring that it's not completely overloaded with stats and jargon. And I'd like to direct particular thanks to Sophie Bradfield and her team for those reports that are hidden away, particularly the stated BCP one. I think they're fantastic tools that we can use going forward in many different areas. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, and I'll add mine and our full cabinet's thanks to that as well. So, okay, we've got the recommendation as put that we are approving, the cabinet is approving the proposed approach to levelling up. So all those in favour, please show. That is unanimous, and I'm glad to see it. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Toby, Phil, and thank you all colleagues for your contribution. Okay, we've now got two papers, agenda item 12 and 13, around the business improvement district. So I'll come to Phil Broadhead. Agenda item 12, coastal business improvement district. Phil.
Thank you, Chair. As you pointed out, we've got two papers ahead of us, both around the business improvement, two of the business improvement districts that we have in the BCP Council area, namely the coastal bid and the Bournemouth Town Centre bid. The first of those two papers deals with the coastal bid. This will be the third term for the coastal business improvement district, which goes to ballot on the 2nd to the 30th of March this year. Quite unusually, because they're changing their boundaries slightly, this is technically not a reballot. It has to be almost like a new bid, but the reality is it will be the same, broadly the same functional area and the same function itself. I think we've had a couple of these other papers about business improvement districts, and we've had a pretty unanimous view that the relationship we have with the various bids throughout the area is very, very positive. What they add to not just the businesses, but also the whole place, it cannot be understated. They're fantastic partners in general. They add a lot of extra value to things like extra CSAS officers, extra money for going a little bit above and beyond, be it events. They're fantastic partners, and crucially, they're also a really good way of hearing the voice of business. They stand up for business, and we work incredibly closely with them. The two papers that we have, therefore, are, first of all, we have a number, the BCP Council has a number of properties that would have to pay, that are levy payers that would have to pay an additional levy should the bids continue to operate. So it's, do we wish to support them in that direct way as levy payers ourselves, and also that we help to run the bid process for them. So I've said before, I'm a huge supporter of the bids. I think they add a tremendous amount of value to all of our business communities. And so for the first paper, we're dealing with the Coastal Business Improvement District, and I commend that to Cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm very happy to second that paper. I don't think I really need to say anything in addition to how you've done it. We've seen some of these before quite recently, haven't we? I'm not seeing any members wishing to speak. Do any members of Cabinet wish to speak on this paper? No. So in that case, please let us take the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And I'll come back to you, Phil. Agenda item 13.
Thank you very much. So much the same. This is the reballot of the Bournemouth Town Centre Business Improvement District. Again, this will be its third term and run for another 5 years, or from the 1st of July 2022 all the way through to 2027. Much the same with the last paper. We have an incredibly close relationship with the Bournemouth Town Centre bid. We work with them on a whole host of initiatives, and as we look to reimagine our high streets in the future, they're taking a leading role on that as well, and are really clear voice of business. I think it's also worth highlighting within this particular one the excellent work we've done with the Bournemouth Town Centre bid, particularly around our events programme, everything from the Christmas tree wonderland to all of the other ways that we're always trying to create activity and encourage people to come and visit Bournemouth Town Centre. We consistently have one of the best footfall increases across the country for Bournemouth Town Centre. A lot of that is the fact that we're a tourist destination, but a good part comes down to the constant laser focus that we put together with the bid on how we continually reinvent and improve our high streets, and I'd be really, really keen to see them continue for their third term. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, great, and technically I'll second that, and absolutely as would I. And I think I'd just like to place on record my thanks to definitely the Bournemouth bid and whole bid community in how they're really embracing our agenda around cleaner, greener, safer, and actually how they're helping shape our agenda in terms of it's been some of the feedback, really clear feedback from our business improvement districts who know our area so well, that has led to us really doubling down on our pride in place, on our cleaner, greener, safer agenda, and absolutely about how we're delivering vibrant places, which I'm delighted Councillor Dunlop is leading on. Okay, and let's go to other members, and I have Councillor Allen Hazel.
I'm very pleased to support this. I work closely with the bid. I think they're excellent partners. I just wanted to say what excellent partners they've been around the homelessness agenda and attending many meetings, particularly around comms, and how they've supported with the contactless giving points in Bournemouth. And I really appreciate that. And I just think, as I say, they're excellent partners. And as also Town Centre Councillor, along with Councillor Mike Green, I think we would both say that we really enjoy working with them, and they are really a force for good in Bournemouth. Thank you.
Yeah, here. Okay, and I'll now go to Councillor Nigel Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In my professional life as a child surveyor looking after enclosed shopping centres throughout the UK on behalf of institutions, because of the land holdings, I was regularly invited to be part of a bid team, both as director and leader in certain cities around the country. And I saw the tremendous change that it brought about because it really engaged with the business community. Sometimes that they're so full on with their daytime actually running their businesses that they don't have the extra resources to actually think in the way that the bid can. So I fully commend the re-establishment for a further term of the Coastal and also Christchurch, which just started, as well as this one for Bournemouth as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks for all the contributions on that. I have nothing, no other members to speak. So unless the Phil would like to come in and sum up, I will move to the vote. Phil.
Thank you. Happy to take this to the vote. If both of these are successful, then we will have 4 business improvement districts across the BCP area, which covers pretty much all, certainly of our main district, High Street areas, which is where they're most active. Echo Councillor Brooks's point, we had only the second meeting yesterday of the Christchurch Business Improvement District, who are already hitting the ground running. And indeed, as an example, we're working collectively with the Christchurch bid on how we can help with a package of compensation, a request to Wessex Water for the businesses that affect Embargates in Christchurch on the 3-month closure caused by Wessex Water's works. It's just one small example of the joint working and how it can help real people and real businesses. So sincerely hoping that we can keep that record of success going.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's move to the vote then. All those in favour, please show. And thank you, that is unanimous. Great. Okay, so let's move to agenda item 14, which is urgent decisions taken by the Chief Executive in accordance with the Constitution. And I can report that there are, to date, there are none, so with nothing on that item. So we move to agenda item 15, which is if any members have comments on that, please table them now. I'll advise that the latest version of a forward plan was published on the 31st of December 21, so that is available for all to see. Not seeing any comments on that, so can I just close by thanking my colleagues for their input today, officers for their support, and any members of the public who have engaged with us either live or on catch up. Thank you very much. It's really appreciated. So I wish everyone a very happy new year, and so this meeting is now closed. Thank you.